I really like the movie Dune, and Joshua Tree, where I live, kind of looks like an alien planet, so today we're making sci-fi inspired lights. I bought these solid glass bricks for about $8 each, and I just started arranging them to find a shape that would look cool and hold some of the refracted light. A rectilinear pinwheel appeals to me, but I want to adjust them so that they're at slightly different heights. I started mocking up the design for the concrete pieces with Lego. Once I established some geometry that would hold the glass bricks upright, I then used Lego bricks to build out an entire tower that I'm going to encase in silicone so that I can make a mold for white concrete. For the lighting components, I'm just using an off-the-shelf solar-powered landscape light from Home Depot. The Lego tower represents 1/4 of the concrete base, and I just have to make sure that the light fixture will fit inside of it. I've made silicone molds this way quite a few times, and I just start by hot gluing the Lego contraption down to a piece of melamine. Hot glue is great for holding the bricks steady, and afterwards when I'm done, I can just scrape them off with a razor blade without harming the Lego. Melamine's pretty easy to work with. I just cut it with a circular saw, and to fasten the pieces together, I prefer pocket holes. I'm using the Kreg 720 Pro jig here, which makes it quite easy to make a box. The silicone material is quite expensive, so I want the mold to be as thin as possible, but if it's too thin, the walls will be floppy and the weight of the concrete will push out on them. So this outer mold is actually going to be used 2 times. Once for pouring the initial silicone over the Lego bricks, but then I'll use it as an outer scaffolding when I pour concrete into the silicone. If I didn't need this outer stability from the melamine, I could just use cardboard or pieces of plastic packaging to make the outer mold for the silicone. The Lego structure has an unusual geometry, and there's some parts within the melamine box that are bigger than they need to be and would result in a lot of wasted silicone. So I just cut some scrap pieces of 2x lumber that I can use to fill in these big empty spots, which will reduce the total amount of silicone needed. I'm using pocket screws to screw the pieces together and then gluing them down to that base piece of melamine. I typically get a pretty good seal just using the hot glue, but to be on the safe side, I like to go over it with some silicone caulk on the exterior. For the mold making, I'm using Mold Star 30 by Smooth On. I've used this a bunch of times, I get really good results, and the molds are super durable. It's also just really nice using a 1-to-1 mixing ratio because it doesn't involve any math or even remembering how many scoops of one side you put in versus the other. I poured it right over the Lego and then let it cure overnight. You really only need about like 8 hours, but I always let it go a little bit longer just to be on the safe side. Now I can scrape away the silicone caulk and hot glue, rip the base plate off, and then undo some of the pocket screws. I'm going to keep this outer mold in 2 pieces that are sort of L-shaped so that it's nice and easy to screw them back on when I'm doing the concrete pours. It's almost impossible to pull a vertical shaped object out of a really deep mold like this, so I just use a knife to cut the mold into 2 pieces, and I typically like to do this around one of the corner edges. I just find that when you put the pieces together, it's better to have that seam on a corner. It just disguises it a little easier. Now I have a nice 2-piece silicone mold that I can rinse off and get ready to prep for the concrete. The pieces fit perfectly into the melamine shell, and I know which side goes where because of that little scrap piece of wood that I used to reduce the amount of silicone material. Now I'm going to make my own white concrete mix. But before we do that, let's hear a word from the sponsor of this video, Ridge. This video is sponsored by Ridge. I was excited about this sponsorship when I heard that Marquez Brownlee, one of my favorite YouTubers, is working with Ridge. Ridge sent me a bunch of gear, and here are some of my favorites. My keys have been sort of a disaster, and it feels like I have a ninja star in my pocket sometimes. So this Ridge key case in gunmetal looks great, holds up to 6 keys that can fold inside the case, sort of like a pocket knife, which means that they don't poke me in the thigh when I get into my truck. The Ridge wallet, also in gunmetal, has a really clean design, holds up to 12 cards, which is way more than I need, and most importantly for me, has RFID blocking, which keeps my cards secure from digitally advanced thieves. The wallets even have an AirTag attachment option, so you can always know where your wallet is. Ridge wallets have over 3 million customers, over 100,000 5-star reviews, that's a lot, and an extended 365-day risk-free trial. You can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Also, the durable materials means that each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. I am constantly working on new designs, and I wholeheartedly endorse this bolt action pen. It has a really satisfied clicking action. I was already aware of these everyday carry items from Ridge, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that Ridge also makes high quality luggage, and this handsome piece will be my new carry-on as I travel to Toronto to visit our new factory. So go to ridge.com/homemade, that's ridge.com/homemade, and get up to 30% off through April 1st. Thanks to Ridge for sponsoring this video, and don't forget to click that link in the description. Alright, back to the project. I've been making my own white concrete for quite some time now. I just take some rinsed sand, sometimes I just scoop it right out of the desert here, give it a good rinsings to get off all the sort of organic particles, and then I just mix 5 parts of sand to 1 part white Portland cement. You can buy pre-made off-the-shelf white concrete mix, but they tend to be pretty expensive. And I can get a 90-pound bag of white Portland cement for just about $19. I try to mix the dry ingredients first before adding water, and then I just mix it until it's the consistency of lumpy oatmeal. I scoop it into the silicone, and then I use my hammer drill to vibrate it down. Now, because this mix doesn't have any large pieces of gravel or aggregate, it tends to settle quite easily, and I don't get a lot of bubbles with this just sand and cement mix. I find that a hammer drill is most effective when you use it on the base of the concrete mold. It is kind of loud though. I let the concrete cure for 24 hours and then removed it from the mold. After just 24 hours, the concrete isn't fully cured yet, so I have to be a little bit careful not to break it at this point. Now I can just rinse off the mold and pour another batch of concrete into it, and this time I'm just gonna not quite pour it all the way full, and that's how I'm gonna get that cascading effect for all the different glass bricks, where each one is at a slightly different height. So, same mold, just filled to different heights. The first block I poured all the way full, and this is the lowest of the 4, and I left about 3.5 inches empty at the top of the mold. The landscape lighting had a little bit of a overhang in front of the lens that covers the light bulb. The housing is all made out of aluminum, so I just cut away some of the excess parts with my angle grinder. You could do this with a hacksaw, or you could just leave them on. I just wanted to get it a little bit smaller and tighter so it would fit more easily within the concrete cavity. So now I have my 4 concrete pieces that all fit around the light fixture, and I'm just going to glue them together using Quikrete anchoring epoxy. This is a super strong masonry glue. I use it for gluing steel to rocks. I use it for gluing concrete to concrete. It's good for all sorts of application, but it's not the cheapest material. So I just squirted some in between the concrete quarter pieces, and then just used my Kreg clamps to hold them together while the epoxy cures. These are going to serve as landscape lights on my new 5-acre property where I'm building Maker Ranch 2.0. The lights come with a solar panel and a pretty long cable, which is nice, so I can just dig a little trench to hide the cable and set up the solar panel in a place that gets nice direct sunlight. The concrete goes right over the light, and then the glass bricks go right on top of the concrete. One of the things I really like about living in Joshua Tree is that we see stars. There's not a lot of light pollution, and I certainly don't want to contribute to that either. So I made sure to use landscape lights that provide just a small amount of illumination, and when you put the glass blocks over them, it kind of captures some of that light, and you just get to see these glowing glass bricks, which is great for sort of marking a path or a little bit of wayfinding, but it's not substantially contributing to lightening up the skies. I'll end up putting about 8 of these around the property, and I like that it's easy to switch out the light fixture if anything goes wrong there. Meanwhile, the glass and the concrete, well, pretty much last forever. They're about as UV resistant of materials as it gets. Thanks for watching, thanks to Ridge for sponsoring this project, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks!